Okay, well, with that then, it is my pleasure. She's going to kill me for this, but I get to introduce, of course, my friend, and our dean and our faculty member, Julie. And since we're celebrating, I thought this might be kind of fun. I don't know whose house, but as you see, there's Julie, there's Kent.
Is that funnier of me or Kent?
And that's been one of the fun things, of course. If you haven't liked our Facebook page, go do that. We put up a bunch of really fun old pictures that are fun to see the history of the department. But, and Paul, I don't know if you can see that, but we'll make sure you get a picture, that picture too. And Don McCarty, of course, and there's Dick right there. Julie joined the faculty here in 1986 and also served as chair and associate dean before leaving first for Miami University of Ohio and then the National School Boards Association. And then she came back here in 2000, I have to look, in 2005. We still claim her as ours. She's our faculty member as well as being our dean. And she's been gracious enough to agree to come and open our proceedings today. So please help me welcome Julie Underwood. Thank you.
I love that picture. Where's Kent? Kent, is that funnier of you or me? Actually, I think that picture was taken at, am I on? Yeah. At Merle Strong's, it may have been at Merle Strong's retirement party, recognizing what was going on there. Or it may have actually been at George's house, right? And that was many, many years ago, and I told my oldest daughter that I was going to a retirement party. And, you know, when I came here, my oldest daughter was a year old. And was just turning a year old. And she said, retirement party, what's retirement? And I said, well, that's when you don't have to work anymore. And she was like, her eyes were like, can you retire? It's like, no, dear, I can't retire. And I'm still telling her to this day, no, dear, I can't retire. So let me say a couple things, and I actually do have notes, so I'm going to stay up here for most of the time because those of you who know me, if I don't stay with my notes, I will ramble forever, and we don't want to do that. But first of all, so I want to thank Rich and Dorothy and Julie for actually putting this together. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful celebration, and who but the Germans would have a word for celebration of work, right? I mean, how German is that? And certainly last year we had lots of retirements all around the School of Education. Or is that last year or the year before last? Year before last. Most of, I don't even know. I'm trying to think. I'm, channeling Brad. I'm channeling Brad for a number. I don't know how many retirements we had in the School of Education that year, but at least 14, right? 14. Most of them. It was the Scott Walker Early Retirement Incentive Plan. Scared it right out of people, and they retired. And so it certainly took us a while to readjust to that new normal and to think about how many people we would lose and what would happen. But it also gave me a chance to think about what we have had and a number of these people who actually have been great leaders in their field and actually continue to inform what we've done today. I mean, they really have been people who have made this place. So I really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today and help you in this celebration of work, which is actually a celebration of people's lives and the body of work that they have created. So within this group of people, it's very nice to think about this because with the exception of Alan Knox, I was in the Department of Ed leadership when each one of these people was hired. So that does make me think about retirement. So as I look at this list of people, some things come to mind, and I'll try and give you some generalizations. Some of those generalizations are, look at this group of people. We made good choices. We made good choices. We hired and supported some people who have done wonderful work here at the University of Wisconsin and for education across the United States. Another piece, we built a good team. Those of you who are emerita in the field, emerita within this department, and the team that goes on, we built a really good team. The other is this group of people, and those actually, I keep thinking about this as a continuum, because we had a group of people who retired right before these people were hired. So, oops, I'm feedback. Ken, you don't want to hear me twice. We had a cohort of people when Dick Rossmiller retired, and so I think about this as a continuum, that group of people, this group of people, and certainly those people who are currently in the department. We've had an incredible impact on the field of educational leadership. This department has had a huge impact on the field of educational leadership across the United States. Think about the people who came before, these people here, the people who are currently there, and get yourself a visual image of the generations of students that have come from all of these people. It is the pyramid effect. We've had an incredible impact on educational leadership across the field. And actually, going back and thinking about all of the years of service, I keep coming back to my mind, oh my Lord, am I old? It's like, oh wow, I've been here for a while. So I would like to think about some things in the past, and if you will bear with me, I'd like to go through that. But I guess at a retirement of work, or maybe a retirement of retirement, or a celebration of retirement, you get licensed to actually think about some things that have happened in the past. So bear with me, but I think that's what you wanted me to do, right? Maybe that is, as last man standing, I get to do that. So as Julie said, I started out in this department in 1986. My daughter was a year old, and in those days it was called educational administration. Dean Bowles, Marv Fruth, and Dick Rossmiller were, I've got to say, were dominant personalities in the department. Because actually, when I think about that, I mean, those three personalities do immediately come to mind. And of course, in the higher education section, it was different. Because in the higher education section, that department in 1986 was anchored by both Don McCarty and Joe Kaufman. Different than the kind of people or the direction that the department is now. Because of course, Don McCarty had been an administrator on this campus. He had been the dean of the School of Education, and then he came to the department. Joe Kaufman had been an administrator. He'd been a dean of students on the UW-Madison campus during days of great turmoil. He'd been a university president and then came back to campus to be a member of this department. So the department was a different kind of department, and it was a different time. It was definitely a different time. In 1986, no woman had ever been tenured in our department. No woman had ever been tenured in our department in 1986 when I was hired. Lenore Netzer was part of our department, but actually the department was built around her. We never tenured her. It was really a different time in a different department. The idea of a tenure clock extension. We didn't have a word for that like Festschrift. It did, on this campus, it may have existed, but not really. Not for any reason. It was basically unheard of. And as a matter of fact, in that tenure process, George Kleminski and Marv Fruth, because they were my mentors, had me absolutely convinced that in order for me to get tenure, I would have to stand in front of a CISA map, and they would point to a school district, at which point I would have to identify the name of the school district and the sitting superintendent. Right? George, I'm not making that up, am I? Right? I am not making that up. And the sad part is, I believed them. I studied for that test. That was like, for me, as an assistant professor, that was my oral exam. CISA 6, name the districts. So every time I see a CISA map, I still have a little physical reaction. So there are other personal things, and I apologize for personal reminiscence, but it was such a different time. When Donna Shalala became chancellor, she started a program called the Partner Hire Program, right? Actually, we called it the Spousal Hire Program then, and you all take it for granted. But the Spousal Hire Program, when it was started, I think Dick probably was department chair, and he came to the department to tell us about this Spousal Hire Program. And sitting there, he tells us about this great Spousal Hire Program, and Marv Fruth turns to me, and in Marv Fruth's whisper, which is like magnified across the entire Camp Randall, says to me, "Julie, this is great. We can hire you a husband." Absolutely meant with the greatest affection. Absolutely. Never crossed his mind that it would be anything different than that. So it was a different time. It was a different department. It was a different campus. It was a long time ago. I am old. That's the refrain. But in the 1990s, we had a cohort of faculty who were really approaching retirement age. Just at about 1990, maybe even a little bit before. And we actually had some incredible leadership during that time, too. We have incredible leadership now, but we had incredible leadership then. And Jay Stampin was, I believe at that time, leading us in a quality improvement exercise. That quality improvement exercise changed the department significantly, in my opinion. We came together as a cohort, as a community of scholars, as a real community of learners, and thought about what we were going to do as part of Jay's, not just a strategic planning exercise, but a quality improvement exercise. Jay, this is right. I'm not making it up, right? Oh, yeah. So he actually did. We were reading the books together. We were talking about it. We used it to change our curriculum. And we also used it as part of the conversation led by these people who were retiring to think about what we wanted to do next. To honestly have an honest conversation about who we were, where we had been, and what we could do in the future. And it was led by people who were in the process of getting ready to retire. And so they, I think, made this informal pact of, all right, who's going first? When are we going to go? And then how are we going to replace people? And who will we become at the other side? So the plan was to do some strategic hiring, to go against the School of Education kind of culture and do strategic hiring, not hiring people who were just starters as assistant professors, but to think about people who were great in their field already and would become better if they would come to the University of Wisconsin, transplanted to the University of Wisconsin, and thereby even make us better. Very thoughtful. And the idea was to actually think about finding the best players in our field. Not thinking about, oh, we need a vice whatever person, and then narrowly picking somebody who looked just like that person, but to think about some of the best players in the field. And I believe it was probably Dick's job to go and talk to John Palmer about this approach. And have you ever tried to persuade John Palmer of something? Not an easy person to persuade, particularly if you want to do something entirely different. But leave it to Dick. He actually did manage to persuade John Palmer to let us do this, to let us fill in the best players, and then we take the subspecialties and fill in as we needed to for the future. Fill in around some great people. That's what we did. That's what we did. Because you can always hire people to teach this course or to teach that course or to fill in. But we needed some posts. And that's what we did. So I think the strategy worked. We did recruit great people. And to me, the proof of that, of Dick's strategy, of that retirees group strategy working, is the scholarship that we see. Or, Rich says, our rankings. If you believe in rankings, our rankings. The quality of the students sitting in this room and elsewhere across the world, and the department as it currently exists. Because out of this group comes what we have now. It is thinking about those generations and respecting those elders as they have moved us to where we are these days. And certainly it was different times, and it made us who we are today. So I want to thank that group of people who are actually in the room today, who made that next generation possible. So when we think about these people, we did that, and Paul Bredesen, we've been doing these things in alphabetical order. So, Paul. Hey, Paul. He's frozen. He put up a damn paper copy of himself. That's a picture of him. He's not even there. Paul, lift your hand up. Are you there? Paul, do you know your face is frozen?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Can you talk to us?
You should be able to.
He should. Take him off mute for a second. I've never known Paul Bredesen to be muted. There. It's just it's like a 30-second delay. Paul, lift up your hand. So I promise I won't embarrass anybody, but Paul, we did recruit Paul, the Spanish teacher Paul. Paul joined our department, this department, your department I don't know how to call this department. It is my department, but usually I don't get to say my department. We recruited Paul in 1991 out of Penn State. And let me tell you, he was really glad to get out of that little tiny town. It would tell stories about the airport in Penn State in Happy Valley, how you actually had to go shoo the deer off of the landing strip before you actually had a plane that would come in. So he was pleased to leave Penn State. And Paul's actually served the department incredibly well. Now I'm going to get feedback again, Adam. I'm sorry. He's talking? Paul, wait. Paul, do you have... It's like, where's the Ouija board? Paul, do you have something to say? God, don't you love technology? You'll get your time. So Paul certainly served our department well as both a faculty member and department chair for a long time. Paul's work obviously is in the area of professional development, and think about the work that he's done in building the capacity of educators and thinking about issues of teacher empowerment. He has really helped many people understand the most important elements in a classroom, that of a teacher, and the most important elements of a teacher being professional development, growing, being part of that, and making sure that we have high-quality teachers in a classroom. And Paul was a wonderful addition to the department. Marv was always very, very proud of Paul. Marv actually was Paul's advisor and was so pleased that campus was going to allow us to bring back one of ours. And we were really pleased to have Paul and Mary come back to be part of the Madison community when he came here. Now, Alan Auden joined the department in 1993. And whenever I think about Alan Auden joining the department, well, we recruited him out of USC. And David is here from USC. And we were really pleased to actually even think about recruiting Alan. And this is one of those like, okay, so you go and you talk to people who you think are great, right? So recruiting somebody out of USC to Madison was like, whoa. You think we can really do that? Well, let's go talk to him and see. Let's go talk to him and see if he'd have any interest in coming back to the Midwest. And I think about that recruitment particularly because I was department chair. And it was like the first thing that I had to do. The first hire I had to do was, think about it. Recruit Alan Auden out of USC and get, you know, guys know the red tape, you know? I like Fran's comment, go big red tape. The red tape in 1993 to hire somebody was even worse than it is now. So this was not an easy task. And it was certainly a learning experience for me. And of course, we were recruiting him because of his work in school finance. He was a nationally renowned expert in the area of school finance and working in the area of resource allocation. And there's no question that he's had an impact nationwide then and now. His work at CPRE actually kept UW-Madison anchored in CPRE in an important way and really built that important network. And it was something that we needed in the department. It was something that we needed in the School of Education and UW-Madison. But was like, boy, which is harder, memorizing all of those school districts and their superintendents or recruiting Alan Auden out of USC? Not sure. Then we also hired Kent Peterson. Kent was part of the first of this group, actually, to be hired. We recruited Kent in 1987. And so we recruited Kent out of Vanderbilt. Yes, I will admit I'm very petty, at least when the door is closed, because recruiting anybody out of Vanderbilt gives me great glee. In those days and in these days, doesn't matter, yes, I am petty. And so actually, but that's another one, like how do you recruit Kent Peterson out of Vanderbilt? It was something unheard of that was happening, that we were doing. And he'd already done some of his work, principalship. He'd already done some of your work with Terry Deal. I mean, find great people, bring them to Madison. And he continued in his work with the National Center for Effective Schools, and of course here, the Lead Academy. But his work with principals, yes. But personally, his work with cultures and school cultures is unparalleled. To help people understand our institutions and the cultures within our institutions and help them understand why things happen and how things actually can be changed has had an incredible impact on many institutions and on many individuals. Because as we know, culture eats plans for lunch. So that's been incredible, powerful work. We recruited Al Phelps from the University of Illinois. At least we were going from public to public, and so that wasn't quite so daunting on that one. And we recruited him to take the position of the director of the Center for Education and Work. And so the deal was, we actually only recruited him as a half-time person. As a half-time person. Well, we got the good end of that deal, and so he was supposed to be half-time in the department and half-time director of Center for Education and Work. And I do recall that, that Merle Strong, for those of you who don't know Merle Strong, it is your loss. Merle Strong was a wonderful person, and Merle Strong was just like Cheshire Cat grin during this entire process. You would have thought that we had hired one of Merle's own children. And I think Merle, did Merle have 7, 8 children? I mean, Merle had lots of kids. And actually, you would have thought that Al was one of his kids. The way he was so happy, he was so excited. And Al took the Center for Education and Work and really moved it into the 21st century. But I have to say, and somebody else can talk about your scholarship, I'm sorry, this is all personal. The way he did that with Merle around, because Merle stayed close, he did it in such a respectful way that Merle continued to be absolutely gleeful, even though Al changed the Center for Education and Work substantially. And Merle loved every minute of it and made the Center for Education and Work really what it is, and did a fantastic job. But also, like Merle, and like like our entire group here, one of the other things that Al is known for is his mentorship of students. You never, maybe it's like being a Marine. You're never a past student of Al Phelps. You know, you're always one of Al Phelps's students, and that is that's pretty powerful, particularly when you look at Al's list of students. I mean, in the Votech community, it's virtually a who's list of students, of Al Phelps students. Alan Knox came to campus a little earlier than that, but was recruited from the University of Illinois as well. So it was pulled 2 of them out of the University of Illinois. And Al came to not originally to the Department of Educational Administration, Ed Leadership, but came to CAVE. And, you know, Alan Knox is an institution unto himself. You know, Alan is the ever-ready bunny, and he just keeps moving. Alan is, as I just heard, that Alan has got yet another book coming out that will be published fairly soon, and he just keeps moving in that area, which is amazing when you think about the length of his career, because he actually was and is a pioneer in his field. And that's incredibly important. But personally, what I think about when I think of Alan Knox is the incredible courage and leadership it took to move CAVE and Educational Administration, Ed Leadership, ELPA, together. Because that, I do believe, that's Alan Knox's leadership, his foresight, and his hard work, and actually his selflessness of bringing those two units together. Because you know, on this campus, well, actually, a merger of 2 departments anywhere is a hard thing to do. But a merger of 2 departments on this campus is a miracle. So him actually moving that together, I credit his leadership for navigating that. So all of these people are strong people. They're incredible people in their field. They're great mentors. They're great teachers, and they're great people. They're great colleagues. They have been great colleagues. So I also get to think about, well, what's happened during this time? So let me just posit that there are 4 ways that we've seen incredible changes. There are probably lots of other incredible changes, but I think there are 4 different ways that we've seen incredible changes during their careers. The 108,
80.
100 on this campus.
108 on this campus.
108 years of service on this campus. Some of the things that I see as trends during those 108 years of campus. Oh my Lord, am I old? 108 years? Oh, altogether, cumulative. It's the power of compounding interest, right? Whew, makes me feel better. So my 4 things are the increase in outside funding, research funding, certainly a change. Globalization, technology, and privatization. So let me take them one at a time. So certainly we have seen an increased importance in outside research funding. It is obvious all over this entire campus. The outside research funding in this period of time has changed, literally changed the face of this campus. The cranes that you see are so much due to outside research funding. If you go over to the west side of campus, the science side of campus, the new energy building, the new Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery, outside research funding. And even in the School of Education or within the Department of Educational Administration or Leadership, outside research funding has absolutely changed what we do, and it has changed who we are. Fortunately, within this department, it has not changed priorities in terms of good work, taking care of students, and taking care of the state of Wisconsin, but it has changed what we do in the way that we do it. WCER next year celebrates its 50th anniversary. The old R&D Center, as it was originally called, celebrates its 50th anniversary. Currently this year, we're looking at $47 million in expenditures of outside research money going through WCER. It's a different time. And of course, each one of these faculty have been a large part, or certainly have done more than their part, in bringing research dollars into the School of Education, into WCER, onto our campus. And it actually, of course, supports research, develops new knowledge, and of course, supports our graduate students. Important thing to do, really a fundamental change on this campus that you wouldn't think about because it is such a part, it is in the DNA, as much as the Wisconsin idea is. That is in the DNA on this campus these days. The second thing is the globalization of education. I guess, think about our Skype friend. Is he frozen again? I swear, he's got a picture of himself that he's put up there. Globalization. In the 1980s and the 1990s, we've certainly focused on U.S. PK-12 education and higher education, and I think it was all right to actually say, to make resource allocation decisions, saying, we're going to focus on domestic work and not do any kind of resource allocation thinking about international work or globalization. And I think today it's clear that we know what's going on in the rest of the world. Globalization is part of everything that we do. It's important for us to be a part of the rest of the world and for the rest of the world to be a part of us. Nobody in this day and age would ever think about making the argument that we shouldn't allocate resources to help us internationalize or globalize what we're doing. It just would be unheard of, and that's a drastic change. We really do now understand how interconnected we are, and we really do have a global community. And these people have been part of that. I think UMEA, is it UMEA University, or does the U stand for university and UMEA? UMEA. So the U stands for UMEA. ELPA Schrift. So I actually think that UMEA considered Paul a faculty member there for a very long time. He was part of theirs, right? And that brought those two institutions together in quite a different way. Kent's work obviously transcends cultures, and the work that he has been able to do across the world actually brings that globalization into us in quite a different way. We have students who go overseas. We have so many more students that come and are part of us. Many years ago, it used to be that we had groups in this department. We had groups of students who would come from other countries, and they would come as groups. Quite often, they would come as groups, and their country would pay for them to come here. They would come as an independent cohort of their own. They would get their doctorate, and then they'd go back to whichever country. You can name like 5 of them, thinking about. And they would build the infrastructure for their K-12 schools or for their higher education programs. And we had that kind of churn within the School of Education, within the Department of Educational Administration, that really did help us globalize. But nowadays, that goes both directions, and nowadays we actually think about it as an institution. We don't think about it as individual cohorts of students or individual faculty members doing one or two things. And certainly, this department has been a leader in that area, and the new ELPA's new Global Master's Program is an incredible example of how we are beginning to provide this kind of globalization, internationalization, recognize it, and not just think about it as, oh, I'm not sure we can do that in terms of resource allocation, but think about it as a core of what we can do and what we should do, being part of that global community. Quite different over the 108 years that we're thinking about here. And so obviously, issues of technology and education. It's not my field. Rich is sitting right there. Technology certainly has made the world a smaller and more connected place. I think that's probably why we've been able to globalize the way we have. But it also helps us change how students learn and how we teach, which is wonderful. If you look at the work that Rich has done in innovative learning and organization building, stands to be quite different, to actually change learning, to change teaching, to change education and educational institutions. But in this department, we've also had a large group of faculty who have engaged in some kind of blended learning or used the telepresence. The telepresence for instruction. I think Colleen has done that. Julie Mead has taught regular online courses. We really have, over this period of time, changed what we do, how we work, using technology. And I think that actually is quite impressive, since education as a field has not been very accepting of technology and the kind of disruptive impact that technology can have on teaching and learning, even at the K-12 level, let alone the higher ed level, where many traditional universities, like our own, have been willing to say, well, maybe it's a fad and it'll go away. It has been a huge change over these years, and it continues to be so. I mean, we have no idea what's next. We honestly have no idea what's next. But this department has actually not accepted that, not been willing to sit and look and say, it'll go away, but instead has actually looked at ways that we could improve, that we could be different than and better than we have been in the past. Technology. And of course, my fourth area, actually I'm going to do another piece here. My fourth area is the issue of privatization. And in privatization, I'm not going to do all of this. I'm going to show you a couple pieces here. In privatization, I think the other pieces that we've seen, in my opinion, are very good trends, are very positive trends. I honestly believe that the trend of privatization of higher ed and K-12 is not a good trend. I think it's very destructive of public education. And we've seen over this time, the last 20 years, a real trend in the United States to defund and privatize public education. I guess, in the past I've always thought, oh, it may be coming, we need to work hard against it. These days I'm thinking more and more that we've missed that boat and we need to figure out not how to defend it, but to resurrect it. And I believe that we've seen this shift both emotionally, politically, and financially away from public education as an important resource within the United States. We've seen a shift away from that grand public experiment of education for all, for our K-12 and now PK-12 learners, education for all, and higher education for as many people as we possibly can, thinking about the community college, vocational, and higher education as an entire industry. We've really turned away from that. We've turned away from that in that our grand experiment of public education used to be about an investment in democracy, recognizing that it actually took an educated citizenry to have a participatory democracy. And we have turned away from that. And I believe that the theory now is not an investment for our future democracy, but actually education is seen as that private good. So it's an investment that you make in yourself, or an investment that you make in your children. It is my responsibility to educate myself. It is my responsibility to educate my children. But the notion that it is all of our responsibilities to make sure that all children are educated so they can all participate in a democracy and move it further and to protect that democracy, I think we've turned away from that. And, sorry to be a downer, but I really, I've done this work. I've been a public school advocate for 20-some years, many more than that, but I'll just say 20. Back to the theme of, oh my Lord, I am old. I really have in the past thought, it's just we just need to support public schools. I've been the public school advocate, and these days I actually am no longer I'm no longer a conspiracy theorist. I believe that their conspiracy is there. I don't think it's just a theory. I think it's proven, and I think that I can't be a public school advocate. I have to do more than that because it is time to resurrect. It's not just time to protect, and so that's difficult. During this period of time, we of course have seen Wisconsin as ground zero for vouchers. So especially since this has changed so dramatically just in the last couple days, I won't go through talking about privatization the way I thought that I was going to do this a few days ago. But since the budget has passed and the gong has hit and it's now there, let's just think about it maybe in a way that's a little light. So I have, those of you who know me know that I have many collections of cartoons. So yeah, what's eating public education? Well, the private sector, if we'll let them. This actually is a cartoon from the late 80s. It's not current. Don't remember what year this one is. But brick by brick, moving the public nature of public education out of public schools through vouchers. And it's many, many years that we've been doing this, and you have to actually think about why or who or what's going to happen next. But I think it's clear that this is an agenda. We've seen it happen. We're seeing it happen ground zero again in the state of Wisconsin. There are many other states that have done this as well. Most of them, based on an ALEC agenda. When I think about the rationale, well, many vouchers and the notion of vouchers originally came up in the United States as part of the Southern response to Brown versus the Board of Education, closed public schools in many of those states and gave people vouchers so that they could go to the white private schools. It's not a new phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that occurred before. And certainly, part of that may be people's notions that they want to retreat into their own conclave of those who are like them and stay away from the other. But I also believe nowadays that it really is a change in theory, this notion that this isn't an investment in public education, is not an investment in our democracy, but it is the private good that we have for each of us for our own children, not all of us for our democracy or in our country. No, Proposition 38 was a while ago. What year was it, Julie?
96.
Thank you. 1996. I'm not going to, I could just beat this one all the time. So what's the notion? This is an older cartoon. I can't even see the date on it because it's all messed up. And I love this one. So the guy's got his shirt says voucher demolition. It's obviously a principle, right? Kent, isn't that like the cultural icon for a principal? Somebody sitting there at their desk. We know they don't really do that, but that's the cultural icon for a principal.
And the doorway.
Oh, well, but the doorway says public school, right? Doesn't say principal's office, but I think that must be the principal. We're delighted they sent somebody to fix the place, but could you be more specific? This is a newer one, obviously because it's in color. We must save public education. And how would you like to accomplish that? Vouchers. How exactly does diverting scarce resources to private schools save public education? Well, that's kind of the question, isn't it? And that's probably why I say we need to resurrect it, not to protect it. This is one that I absolutely love, and this is a local artist, and it's circular. So I've tried to put the notion on there because you can't really read it. It's failing public schools. It's the first part. Failing public schools. That's why I support vouchers, using tax dollars to pay private school tuition, which leads to failing public schools. Circular logic. And I will. I'll show you one other one, which is like, oh, this is a really old one too. This is a really old one. I think I clipped that one and had it Xeroxed and copied, and I believe when I clipped that one, I was in the Ed Science building.
I think I filed that.
Do you filed that when you were a grad student, right? Yeah. And this is 2011 on this one. And I love this one, so I'll end with this one. The school bus of public education. Well, here's your problem. You've still got a tire. You've still got a tire on this side. So that is one of the things that's changed all of these years. We have some wonderful things that have happened. We also have some pieces that have not been so positive. We could think for a long time about how that's happened to us or how that has happened on our watch. But in my opinion, it has happened. And the conversation moves to thinking about what's the United States view of public education? Is it, or could it ever be again, the notion of educating all children to be active participants in a democracy? We need to think about that. And I know that in the hands of this department, we do think about those things. And we think about that with generations after generations after generations of graduate students who become incredible researchers, incredible scholars, faculty members, and administrators around the United States and now around the world. So I know we're in good hands. I should say something nice, but we need to resurrect. Thank you.